It's time. That was my cuckoo clock. Good morning to the Alpine Church of Christ and everybody else. My name's Curtis Wubbena, and I too am a member of the Alpine Church in Alpine, Texas. Thank you for observing the shelter-in-place ordinance here. Remember to keep your distance, wash your hands, don't touch your face, and most of all, enjoy your family. It's 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, and our focus for the next few minutes is the Old Testament book of Daniel. This morning, we explore Daniel and his faith. Next week, we introduce the book, and later we investigate the prophecies of that book. Two of my favorite chapters are chapters 2 and 8. We begin this morning with a reading of Daniel chapter 1 and part of chapter 2 on down to about verse 23. And I use Audible, which is a program on my iPhone, as a tool to read the Bible. The downloaded program is called the Listener's Bible, NIV, or New International Version. And it is part 20, which is the only thing I don't enjoy about this program. They don't list the books, so you have to go through and write down what part 20 is, which part 20 is the beginning of Daniel. But please enjoy.
This is Audible.
The Book of Daniel, Chapter 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia, and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief officials gave them new names. To Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, "I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you." Daniel then said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink, and gave them vegetables instead. To these 4 young men God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the 1st year of King Cyrus. Daniel 2. In the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." Then the astrologers answered the king, "May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it." The king replied to the astrologers, "This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me." Once more they replied, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it." Then the king answered, "I am certain that you are trying to gain time because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there is only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then, tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me." The astrologers answered the king, "There's no one on earth who can do what the king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among humans." This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death, and men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. He asked the king's officer, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?" Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went in to the king and asked for time, so that he might interpret the dream for him. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. During the night the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, "Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king."
Wow, what a powerful introduction. That was Daniel 1 and Daniel 2 through verse 23. In fact, Daniel is quoted, or at least the book is quoted throughout the New Testament. But my reference this morning for our Bible study is the fellow believer Daniel. I want to mention that Daniel is in Hebrews chapter 11. You might ask, well, is he directly named like Abraham and Noah and other great men of faith? Well, no. But he is mentioned in Hebrews 11 verse 32, when near the very end listing of all the great men of God, it says this, "And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets." So he's mentioned as one of the prophets. Daniel and company live by faith, and that's what our lesson is focused on this morning. As we study this Old Testament biography, we see how people of God respond to God and circumstances in trying situations. Romans 15 verse 4 says it this way. I'm using the New International Version. For everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the Scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope. And so today, this morning, this next week, until this pandemic ends, fellow believers need this book. These are definitely trying times. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I mentioned this last week in my devotional, but relating to the book of Daniel, some mistakenly pretend that Christians are invincible simply by making a statement similar to, in the name of Jesus, I bind you, or things like this. Others challenge God and say things like, God, if you answer my prayer, I'll do this or that. Or if you make me or my family well, I'll do this or that. And I'm not trying to discourage prayer. In fact, I'm trying to encourage communication with God by listening to God, by being that good listener who reads the book of Daniel and applies its message through us today. But this circumstance is not to prove the power of God. Although He's invisible, we know that He is. This is also not to show the strength of Jesus over nature. We do know God is all-powerful and Jesus has been given all authority, Matthew 28, verse 18. What I'm trying to say is that testing God is never appropriate. And that's a big message that we find in the book of Daniel, how the people of God believe in God, but they don't put Him to a test. God alone is supreme as the creator of the world, and He does deserve our praise and honor. But listen to how Jesus, who is God in the flesh, responds when He's asked to do something like some people do today, and that is to test God. In Matthew chapter 4, beginning in verse 5, it says this. Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down. For it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus answered him, It is also written, Do not put the Lord your God to the test. So this is not about making deals right now with God. This is about praising God and giving Him glory while we have breath and life on this earth. In fact, our focus should be on praising God and not in ourselves. Daniel chapter 3, 16 through 18, and I'll admit this is probably the top 3 passages in the entire Bible for me. It tells about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they reply this, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and He will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if He does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Let me reread that. Listen very carefully. This is the attitude that we need to have. And by reading Daniel, we get this attitude. This is from Daniel chapter 3 and verse 18. But even if God does not deliver us, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. So in this Bible study this morning, I hope you recognize that Daniel has a lot to offer in this pandemic. Daniel has a lot to offer as far as having a proper attitude in this situation. This is not a time where we pretend like we're invincible. It's not a time to experiment. It's a time to praise God and trust Him, knowing that God will deliver us. It is a time when we can get on our knees and ask God and reveal our heart. And many times in the Old and New Testament, God has altered everything going on in nature. But it's quite presumptuous for us to tell God what to do or to make deals with God. We need to be like Daniel and like Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and how no matter what goes on in this world, if we lose our lives or our families lose their lives, that we follow in the tradition of believers, that we maintain our allegiance to God no matter what, because He is, and He is a rewarder of those who diligently follow after Him. Join me next week as we begin our history lesson of Daniel and his fellow believers. I do want to encourage you again to fervently ask God for an end to this crisis, because He listens. He alters nature. Just don't make deals or tell God what to do. That never turns out well. I want to thank you for being with us this morning. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the time that you've spent with me this morning. At 11 o'clock, we will have a devotional, and this morning it will be focused heavily on the Lord's Supper. So until that time, thank you, and God bless you.